You're listening to China Manufacturing Decoded from the Sofeast Group. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Adrian here, and I'm joined by Kate, who is our head of supply chain management here at the Sofeast Group. You might have heard Kate on the podcast, normally talking about logistics, shipping, things like that. But today, something a little bit different. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Adrian. Nice to be invited again. I believe it's been more than a few times, but I'm always happy to join.
Yeah, absolutely. We like to get on the team. And so today we're talking about packaging. And packaging is more than just a box. And you're going to go into this. Let's say we're developing a new product. There's so much to do. And there's a lot of excitement. You're going through your design iterations, prototyping, all of this, lots of activity. Does the packaging sometimes risk being thought of as a bit of an afterthought? Is it something that we're not really focusing on maybe as much as we should? We'll talk a little bit about that today and about the sorts of packaging that we might use, differences in e-commerce and retail, mistakes that we make about packaging, when to think about making and designing the packaging. So really big packaging focus. Kate, kick us off.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I've been in the product development business for over a decade, and I cannot tell you how many times projects and products, great products, missed their launch window because of the packaging. This is like one of the top underrated things in product development, as everyone used to think that, packaging is easy, it's fast, all the focus is always on the product. But then you start to think about packaging too late, you start to think about it after mass production, for example, and it just goes wrong. So today, I think that's a great topic we have to cover about types of packaging, what to pay attention to, whether if you're selling on e-commerce or if you're going retail, when is a good time to start thinking about packaging, some recent trends in packaging, and of course, common mistakes. So hopefully, it will be helpful today. So let's begin. So let's start with the types of packaging first. I guess most of our listeners would know about that, but there are like three types of packaging, which is primary packaging. So this is like the first layer that touches the product. So it's your product packaging. So like, blister packs for earbuds, for example, some folding cartons for accessories. So it must protect your product and it needs to showcase branding of your product. So next one is secondary packaging. So this one is just an outer layer that is used for grouping or merchandising. So for example, if you have multiple packs, then this is your bundle more or less and used a lot in retail stores. And then you have the third layer, which is like a tertiary packaging, which is used for like bulk shipment. This is what like the external package that is used during shipments, that is being palletized, that is shipped in containers. So basically your external packaging, like think of pallets, crates, master cartons. So So we will focus today more on primarily packaging because the rest is just more or less goes with the flow, and those are more or less standard. However, like the product packaging is something that always plays a strategic role, and right now with more and more brands going social media, all those unboxing videos, it became super important to have a nice product packaging. And so let's focus on that one. So usually there are like some phases of packaging that you start. So phase one is the concept stage. So this is when you consider a general packaging direction. You decide whether you'd like sustainable packaging, what is your brand identity, how your packaging will follow the philosophy of your product. So this is like the first months when you're starting to think about it. Then the next phase is when you work on the design of your product. You freeze the design. So this is when you will have your final, or hopefully final, product dimensions, and also you are clear on the number of accessories, like will you have, I don't know, USB-C cable included with your product or not? Will you have like paper manual included? Will you have, if it's earbuds, like some external ear tips? So this kind of accessories that also need to be considered in your packaging and look nice. So this is on a design level in phase 2. Then you are moving to prototype. So that's about in a few months after the first concept in your head. This is where you do the mock-ups, you do the prototypes, and this is also when you start to do packaging prototypes. So you are working not only on the product prototype, but also on the packaging prototype. And this is what is often omitted by creators. They don't start to work on packaging until mass production. But trust my experience, packaging also goes through multiple alterations, and it can delay the product just by weeks, if not months. And I always suggest to use like digital printing packaging that is cost efficient, and you can go with like 5 pieces, like small quantity, to see the packaging. It might not be like super final, but it will give you a lot of insights on the packaging. So, and then phase 4 is pre-production. So this is when you finalize your material, you finalize the artwork, you select supplier, you talk with your packaging supplier about MOQ, and you're good to go into mass production. So there are a few different types of packaging, if I can say so. So one is more intended for e-commerce. Other one is retail packaging. Sometimes it's the same, but there are a few things that you should keep in mind still. So for retail packaging, you would like your product to stand out on the shelf. So it needs to be shelf appeal. It needs to be seen from the space, more or less. So you put a lot of focus on the design. It also includes like marketing copy, UPC barcodes, hang tabs. So this is sometimes also have some plastic window to see the product inside. That's for it. We've been also told by many marketing experts that it's very important for consumers to see through retail box. So that's often case. So you will have some bold graphics, feature highlights on your packaging, so that consumer who comes into, I don't know, Walmart, wherever, can see your product and can easily understand what is inside, how it will look like, all the features, just by looking at your packaging. So that's the focus for retail one. E-commerce packaging has a little bit different focus. It is focused on first on protection during the transit, because you will have a lot of shipping around with e-commerce products by different ways. You might ship by boat from China or from other Asian countries, and then you will be delivered by truck to Amazon fulfillment centers, for example, and then from Amazon fulfillment centers, it will go to your end users at some point. So it's a lot of traveling for the packaging. So you'd like to make sure everything stays in place. Like there is Amazon FFP, which is frustration-free packaging. So they also have some sort of requirements for packaging.
Yeah.
Usually it's minimalist design. You avoid unnecessary layers, and a lot. So depending on which marketplaces you are selling on, they have their own requirements. So it's very important you meet those. So like Amazon has and eBay has their own requirements. So once you're selling on e-commerce, you've decided on your strategy. You need to consider about their internal requirements, and then at the same time, it still needs to be fancy inside, because right now people share online, so it's very popular to receive some product from Amazon or wherever, and then you do unboxing video. And as a brand owner, you would love people to do so. And there are a lot of engagement strategies to motivate your customers to share those unboxing videos online, tag you on Instagram, and build your community. So unboxing experience matters a lot. So on top of being like a sturdy packaging, it needs to be nice inside, and unboxing experience, user experience need to be exceptional. So this is why basically packaging matters in the product development. So as I said, this is your branding. So it's first impression after unboxing is like the first impression your customer will get even before he has a chance to try the product. It's user experience, which will be shared online, which will be part of your comments on Amazon or wherever. So if is it easy to open, for example, do you have the instructions included? Is it clear or so? Then you
Does
need to
the does the
yeah.
quality of the packaging actually match the quality of the product, or at least the perceived quality of the product? Like the way you're talking makes me think of, and I know we've mentioned Apple a few times, but they do kind of lead the way in some things. Apple packaging, if you're listening now, you, like me, probably have an old iPhone box or a box for some headphones or something just lying around because the packaging quality is so good. You're like, I can't throw this out.
Yes, there are many people who are storing their old packaging boxes to store something else. And yes, so that's very important, especially if you have, as you said, for the perceived value. If you want to position your product as a high-end product, your packaging cannot be like thin, I don't know, PP paper or something. It cannot
Hardboard.
be like yes, so packaging needs to match the product
Mm.
value, and vice versa. If it's a cheap product, $1 product, as we say in China, Zhou Jian Zhou Bao You, so like 9.9 RMB plus delivery included. So
Mm.
no one expects you, no one expects you to have like a super fancy packaging.
No.
But if you are building a brand, if it's a brand, then yes, that's very important, and you need to have this perceived value of an expensive product, starting from the packaging. So that's a very good point, Adrian.
Mm.
Which of course has cost impact. Okay, your material choices, the craftsmanship, need for tooling, for example, if it's like something not standard. So this also needs to be considered both in terms of cost, but also in terms of time to market. So that's important to think early. You also need to think, what we already mentioned a bit about accessories, cables, what you will have to make sure your packaging also incorporates all of those. So because like we had a lot of examples where product was ready, but box was not even designed, and our customers missed their launch window, which is especially important for some seasonal products. And because, for example, user manual was forgotten or USB cable was not designed, and then we need to redesign things. So all those things are important.
Well,
Which, yeah,
it's not generic, is it? Because let's say you've got your product and you're nearly ready to launch it, or you're going into mass production, but you don't have the packaging. You can't just say, oh, well, let's just get a box that's roughly the right size and just throw it in there, because you've got to have the insert
yes,
box that the product fits into securely and doesn't just roll around in the box, getting broken during transit, for example. And it's got to have space for the accessories, for the guide. So all of this stuff
yeah.
has to actually be designed to spec.
Yes. So, which leads us to sharing some key milestones that involve packaging. So, once you have your initial product sketches, this is where you need to start thinking about your initial packaging and packaging design. Then, once you have your bill of material, boom, finalized, this is the time to cross-check your packaging and ensure that your initial design has no change in dimensions and everything. Then once you have a product sample approved, this is the time to work on the packaging as well. And then once you send those samples to compliance, for you have decided for your market where you will be selling your product, This is something not to forget, that some things should be included on the packaging, like C, for example,
Mm.
for Europe, or FCC if it's electronics products, or some like for kids products. There are a number of regulations and to packaging as well. So this is also something that you should think in advance.
Yeah, good point. That could be an important obligation, in fact. So missing that could be
Yeah.
a problem. So yeah, set those bookmarks, people. If you're listening, you got to remember these these points as you go through the product development and introduction process.
Yes, definitely. So of course, you can work on all of it along with your product development, but in general, you need to consider at least like 3 months timeline for not for just for packaging. It evolves together with your product development, but these are at least the stages, 3-4 months that you need to consider working on the packaging. So it's like design and mock-up stage. Then you have artwork approval. Then if you need tooling might take 1 month. Sample production might take another 2 weeks. Mass production might also take 2-3 weeks. And then if you need to ship, it's also dependent how you ship. If by sea, then it's easily 1 month or even 1.5 months. So that takes time. You need to plan in advance. And especially based on experience, there are some common bottlenecks. So like artwork can change the last minute. There are sometimes incorrect labeling or language translation, especially if you're shipping to non-English speaking countries. Sometimes there are supplier delays, or there are some issues with MOQ, or just packaging doesn't fit. There are some misalignments on the feed. So all those things you need to give some time margin for those. So to be on the safe side, you need to start it as early as you have the product concept in your head, and have in mind that all of this takes around 3-4 months together.
Yeah, that's important. It's quite a long lead time. It could be quite a long lead time actually to get all this stuff done. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Okay, so now we can move to some trends and some in packaging, of course, as everything evolves. Packaging also changes over time. You've mentioned Apple today, so this stays pretty conservative. And I need to say that we have a lot of customers who come to us, they develop a product, and once we start talking about packaging, maybe at least half of them have Apple as a baseline.
Mm.
So Apple has been inspiring, if I can say so, a lot of creators to do their own minimalist, white but like quite sturdy packaging. Yeah, it's like we've seen a lot. So it's like one of the top references for packaging we've got. However, especially depending on your product, if you're in health and fitness, some essential stuff, like different holistic products, and even much more, depending also on your market, as there are more and more of different sustainable packaging that come into the market. And there are like eco-friendly options. People use a lot of those for their marketing purposes. It's been a trend for the past at least 5 years or even more. So, and it's still there. So there is a lot of demand for sustainable packaging. And the most like top packaging options are biodegradable materials. So those are like corn starch or like different starch-based foams. There is a mushroom packaging. I've I've heard many interesting like cactus, something like many different based like biodegradable options and materials that are now being used. We work a lot with like corn-based starch packaging. We work a lot with PLA, mushroom packaging as well. So this is a trend. And then there is a recycled content in packaging, so post-consumer recycled paper or post-consumer recycled plastic. So this is also important. You need to be careful with this one, based on experience. There is no good way to control how much of post-recycled plastic, for example, is added to your 100% of product, because not always it can be done with 100%, because it
No.
doesn't give the color. Depends on which color. It's also not the same for the shape, forming, like depending. So usually suppliers add certain amount of post-recycled plastic, and this is for marketing. And it's very difficult to track if they added 30% or 50% or 70%.
Yeah, it
We
still
have
requires virgin plastic to be used. So it's not as
Yes.
green as you might think.
Yes, so we have as our listeners might know, we have our own plastic workshop. We've been working with all those like post-consumer plastic, also with some natural plastic options. So we have more and more experience with that. And the more I have experience internally, the more I understand that Chinese suppliers might tell you totally different from how they use, because like, for example, if in our workshop we know that this kind of color or this kind of shape we cannot achieve with this percentage of
Mm.
post-consumer recycled plastic, for example, but suppliers would tell you, no, we can do this. Yeah. And then, yeah, you don't have a way to really to check. So need to be careful with this one. There are also some reusable packaging, like some modular designs that customers can repurpose. This is also trendy, so that you don't actually throw away, or you just, as you mentioned, keep your Apple box for years. So this packaging can be transformed into something else that is useful and handy. I personally like this idea.
Mm.
And in general, there is like minimalism trend in less plastic, fewer layers, smaller boxes. Especially, it's also important for shipping or all those marketplaces. The thinner your box is, the less dimensions, the less you will pay. And also what I see now is no glue trend in packaging. People suppliers try to craft inside the packaging to have less and less glue, which is also cool.
Mm.
So all of this is very nice, but of course there are some trade-offs to be aware of. So one is that sustainable materials cost more. So if you want to be eco-friendly, you need to pay more. So it's higher cost. It's lower moisture resistant, or like structure. There are like less options you can build if you have like some structural inside of your packaging. So that's more difficult.
Mm.
One example that we have now with our own product. So we have this aromatizer, and we have a starter kit of incense pellets of different flavors that are in a like paper craft paper packaging, which is like natural and everything. But after some time, the smell just evaporated, because it
Yeah.
doesn't hold the smell, for
Yeah,
example.
because we
So
tested we originally had plastic sort of
yes,
Ziploc type small bags, right? Then we went
yes.
then we tested the more sustainable paper type.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But because we're talking about aromatherapy woods, and the woods have got oils in, because it was
Yes.
paper, it allowed the woods and the scent to actually evaporate. So
Mm,
in this particular example, yeah, the more sustainable option really did not suit the product.
yeah. So first it had some oil residues on the paper, which was not nice. And second, with time, the flavor just evaporated. So
Mm.
sometimes it doesn't work. So, but if you think that sustainable packaging is very important for your brand, I know that it's super trendy in Europe, for example,
Yeah.
especially in Nordic countries, but mostly almost everywhere.
I think that here in the UK as well, when you receive,
Yeah,
especially with e-commerce now, like the packaging is fairly minimal, and it's mainly completely cardboard. So as a consumer, I know I can take out my product. Okay, fine, I've got my product. That's great. And then I can put all of the packaging into the recycling, and it makes me feel good. It also makes me feel like I'm not left with a problem. Like I don't have random plastics and things that I can't recycle. And then it's like, what am I
Yep.
going to do? Am I just going to dump them? I don't really want to do that, but then it's become my problem. So yeah, I think as a trend for some consumers, they kind of appreciate the more easy to recycle stuff.
Yeah. And then if you go even deeper, you also, if you want to be like eco-friendly 100%, you need to use also eco-friendly inks, and you need to avoid glossy coatings because those are also not eco-friendly at all.
Yeah.
There are also some cool trends like NFC tags, for example, or some QR codes that you scan. This is what we are doing for our packaging. You just scan the QR code and it takes you to website with your user manual, so you don't need to have a paper manual included. There are RFID tags. Some people would have like AR, so you can scan the packaging and view the product demos. So this kind of like virtual reality, NFC tags, and things, and other like RFID are very good add-ons to packaging these days. So to wrap up a bit here, I would like to more or less summarize the common mistakes that we've talked about today.
Yeah, these are the key sort of
So
takeaways, aren't they?
yes, exactly. So one is to don't start your packaging too late. So this is what we see. So it needs to be integrated from the beginning. Otherwise, you are risking to redesign both product and packaging. Then other one is think about e-commerce requirements. For example, Amazon has very specific packaging rules, and if you ignore them, your product will be rejected. Next one is overlooking compliance is one of the major mistakes, like child-resistant packaging for certain products. There are warning labels like California Prop 65 or like country-specific regulations that can cause your product recall if those are ignored. Yeah, underestimating costs. As we mentioned today, of course, everyone would want a high-end packaging, but for example, custom die-cut insert might look great, but it could double your per unit packaging cost as well. So need to find the balance here. And then another one which we didn't cover enough today is poor testing. So, and this is where in our company we put a big focus on reliability. So packaging needs to be tested with drop test, compression test, real world conditions before you go to mass production, especially if this is intended for e-commerce, because yeah, you don't want your customers to receive a product broken inside your beautiful packaging. So this is also a thing to see.
Well, I think
So
there's
yeah,
quite a strong crossover there with product reliability. So the two are very attached, and you've got
yes.
the ISTA transport testing, for example, and a lot of businesses would really need to be doing that kind of testing. We have spoken about this before on the podcast. So yeah, we didn't cover the reliability testing too much, but I can add some links on that.
Yes, please. So yeah, this is we've also seen a lot. I need to say that packaging was not tested properly, and then especially for goods that are sent to Amazon, and Amazon doesn't really check, and then they're stored at Amazon their warehouses, and then it's sent to end consumers, and consumer receives a broken product after quite a long time, and then they post a negative review, and it's already late to claim to insurance company because they accept claims if it's, for example, during shipping when the units are in the master carton. They should not be taken out because otherwise they don't know how it was damaged. And so this is just gets things complicated. And I'm talking from experience here. So yeah, reliability is important. Drop tests are important. Compression test, depending on how you shape. So that's also a thing to test together with your product. So remember that packaging is strategic. Okay, it's not just functional. It's part of your strategy. Start early. Involve cross-functional teams for reliability, for design, for sustainability, for everything you're having in mind. If you're going into sustainability, be practical still. Remember that it adds on product cost, so it needs to be balanced. And it's important to understand the difference between e-commerce and retail packaging mission to make sure you're on the right track. And if you have questions or want to hear more about specific type of packaging that might fit your product, please feel free to reach out to us. We have a lot of experience with packaging, and we have a lot of resources to guide you on packaging. We can help with reliability testing, with any questions you might have on both packaging and product development, and ensure that both fit together, including design creative team as well.
Great. There's nothing more I can add, Kate. I think you've covered absolutely everything there, but that's brilliant. Yeah, do reach out. You know where our website is, and there'll be links to contact us in the show notes for this particular episode. So there you go. Packaging. It's more than just the box that you shove products into without giving much thought. Actually, quite a complicated and important subject. So thanks for walking us through that, Kate. Loved it.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, and always remember, do reach out, even for a small chat. We can always help.
That's it. Love it. Okay, great. Thanks, Kate. And to everybody listening, we'll be back next week. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.